Okay. Well, we have Michelle Thorne from Good Meat Project and Melissa Hempkin from was Wyoming College, but is now not Wyoming College. Melissa, I can't remember what all you're doing these days, but I'll have both of you introduce yourselves. And these guys are going to lead us through a discussion around marketing. More specifically, they're going to help us understand what the heck marketing is and how you might use it. Because I believe from talking to many of you and hearing us talk about marketing over the years that we use the word marketing and sometimes we mean PR, public relations, and sometimes we mean our social media plan, and sometimes we mean a sales plan, and sometimes we mean a lot of different things. Um, and I think that maybe makes it hard for us to get the right kind of marketing help because we don't know how to ask for it. So that is the discussion that we're going to have today. And so I want to queue up Michelle and Melissa, if you guys could take some turns introducing yourself. And then Michelle, I recall you were going to start off the discussion, and then Melissa, you were going to follow up.
Cool. I'm excited. Hi, everybody. I can't see anybody's face,
If y'all could do
but
cameras
that's
and
okay.
at least say hello a little bit, that'd be
Yeah,
great. I know some folks,
I'm staring.
Michelle,
Yeah,
are on the move.
in
We
the
have a bunch of
field.
farmers and field folks and delivery folks. Kiara, I can't believe I can actually see your face. You're usually driving at this time. So,
I,
wave hello to Michelle. And if you have to go off camera,
yay.
also you can.
Look at everybody. That's fantastic. It's great to see you all. Hi, Maggie, Kiara, Carrie, Abigail, Kristen, Tim is who I see. Anybody else? Kelly. Hi, Kelly. Look at everybody. I love it. This is fantastic. And everybody else whom I can't see, that's totally fine. If you want to turn your camera on at any point during this little workshop that we're doing, that would be fantastic. It's always wonderful talking to people as opposed to talking to little black boxes on the screen, even though this is virtual. It does make a difference seeing your faces. So, hi, my name is Michelle Thorne, and I'm the executive director of the Good Meat Project, which is a national nonprofit headquartered here in Oregon. And we help producers, butchers, chefs, and eaters connect across the meat value chain and to align their values in their meat purchases and their meat consumption, building responsible and ethical pathways to meat. However, that does not, the work that we do here is we do help those stakeholders improve their marketing effectiveness and efficiency by creating tools and education resources for them. But marketing is marketing is marketing, and it doesn't matter what your product is. There's a formula for everything in marketing, regardless of your business type. Of course, there are variances across different types of business models and depending on the goals that you're going to achieve or want to achieve, which Melissa and I are going to talk about, I think, a lot in this session. But a little bit about my background, I guess, is I am a graphic designer by trade and have been a strategic marketer for many decades. I'm aging myself just a little bit there. I was born and raised in New York City. I had a graphic design agency where I did lots of incredible work for lots of different types of products and have built several careers, one in marketing and graphic design, one in food and health and wellness, and the other in a variety of things, namely one that has helped me tremendously in this work. It is not It is kind of adjacent to it, but I used to teach game theory and economics to high school and college students. And although that sounds really off the path of the work that we're talking about today, the framework of game theory and decision making has been a game changer in my life. And I think it is a wonderful framework to be able to make complicated decisions while you're able to look at trade-offs and outcomes. And that is very relevant to marketing, especially if you're spending money doing marketing. So I can talk a little bit about that. But before I was in this role, I was working for the Friends of Family Farmers, which is also based in Oregon. My guess is that this is an Oregon-based crowd here, so all Oregonians, woohoo. So I love Oregon. I love my rural life. Hi, Erin. But I loved that work because I was able to interact with producers, grass-fed producers. I was able to participate in policy and see the behind the curtain workings of policy. And I was able to meet some incredible people like Tanya Murray, Sydney DeLuna, Erin Maidlow, and many, 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 many others that have just enriched my professional life and experience. And I'm really excited to be here with you today and share these little tidbits of my knowledge and experience over the years, and with the hope that I can help clarify and or improve your marketing efforts. So I'll hand it off to Melissa.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Melissa Hempkin, and I'm out of West Central Wyoming. And I met Cindy and some of you all through the Northwest Mountain Regional Food Business Center, which covers 6 states. And you've probably been hearing lots from Cindy about things we're doing and pulling in regional resources and collaboration, which has been great for all of us in rural communities and more rural states, which Wyoming definitely is that. So in that role for Regional Food Business Center, I'm the Wyoming co-lead. I work with Anders Van Sant out of the University of Wyoming to lead food business activities in the state for the USDA. And my background is in journalism, which is really more the storytelling side of marketing. And that's how I like to do marketing, but that's what it is. It's telling people why they should buy our product and how we can solve their problems. And through journalism, kind of moved more into marketing through working with farm and ranch businesses, and now more food businesses and food hubs here in Wyoming. I also have my own farm and food business as well that's centered on pastured poultry and specialty crops. So get a lot of real world practice in marketing my own stuff that way, and e-commerce platforms and chart of accounts and all the good stuff that comes with that, which is fun for me. But yeah, Michelle and I visit a little bit. We are very much similar in our what we think is essential for marketing. And there's always fun whistles you can spend money on, but maybe they aren't as essential as the base. And so hopefully today we can give a good run view of what are the basics and what are some really good returns on investment, both for telling customers what you all do and then also telling producers what you all do, because food hubs are very unique. They're in the middle of it, right? You have customers, whether they're wholesale buyers or direct to consumer customers, but you also have the producers you're serving, and you need them to understand how you can help solve their business problems by being a service organization or a service provider to them.
Yeah, it's very much, the food hubs are in a very unique space because you have two different audiences. And so let's just jump right in, shall we? Right?
Yeah, that works for
Um,
me.
as a food hub, you are an aggregator, right? So you have vendors or you have customers that are producers or that are kind of the B2B, right? Their businesses, you're a business, and you're communicating with them and or having agreements with them. You are kind of a distributor of their products, but they are also your customers. And then you have customers who are the general public, the eaters, the people who are giving you money in exchange for some product that they're purchasing at your food hub or whatever your business model is, right? So your marketing has to be very clear, right? Because you have two different audiences. But before we kind of go down that rabbit hole, I think one of the things that Melissa and I talked about when we met with Sydney prior to this is to really talk about like the marketing landscape. That's a place we want to start, right, Melissa? The
Yeah,
marketing
for sure.
landscape, right? So I have a question before I start talking at anyone. I think it's always really important to understand the temperature of the room. And this is marketing 101, what I'm about to do. And I absolutely suggest that you always think about this when you're thinking about your marketing is you have to know who your audience is. Now, I generally know that you all are participating, own, facilitate, run, manage something in a food hub system. Is that correct? Yes. You're in the food hub world in some way, right? So
We got head nods. Yeah.
okay, we got some head nods. For anyone I can't see, feel free to put that in the chat. The question is, currently, what are the two ways or two channels that you're using for marketing? If it's only one, that's okay. Put it in the chat. I just want to kind of understand how you're doing what you're doing in your marketing. What are you using? What tools are you using? What platforms are you using? How are you getting the word out about your business or your product? Okay, I see Carrie's using a website, social media, and MailChimp newsletter. Great.
And one of the things, Michelle's asking for us to know how to, help you all the best, but you also need to know what your customers and producers are using too. For instance, Wyoming runs on Facebook. There's a few Instagram users out there, but it's Facebook. And so as a business here in Wyoming, even if you hate Facebook personally, you better be on Facebook to connect with people.
So what I'm seeing in the chat is I'm seeing social media. I'm seeing a CRM, like a newsletter, right? And I'm seeing websites. And I'm also seeing some offline marketing, like word of mouth and flyers, right? Great. Community bulletins, radio. Ooh, that's fancy. I love that. Leveraging community partners. Okay.
For LinkedIn, Maggie, it looked like you put LinkedIn there. Is that for more of a wholesale buyers that would purchase through the food hub versus say a a direct to consumer sale?
So I'm like food hub adjacent. I work with seafood butchery in schools. But I do have a program. I'm not selling it per se, but I do want people to know about my program. So there is some like marketing to it. But it using LinkedIn in that way to share press that has organically come about the program has been helpful. Because I guess the side of mine is looking for funding, right, to continue the
Yep.
program since it's
Yep.
Yeah.
Great.
I asked because, all the social media platforms have their kind of their niche audience, and LinkedIn is seen as more of a professional network. So that's why I was like, might be that more of that B2B that you want to do on LinkedIn. Yeah.
So I have two follow-up questions. One is, how effective do you think the primary platforms that you're using are? And the second question is, what was your goal in using those platforms? Did you want to find buyers? Did you want to find followers? Were you trying to do, and here's where some of the marketing terms are, and I'll say right here and now, I did create a glossary sheet for all of you so that we have a common vernacular of some marketing terms, because I think that's also really important, language and having a common understanding of the words that are coming out of my mouth and out of our mouths when we're talking about marketing. So the questions are, was it effective? And what was your goal? And if anybody wants to share just briefly their answers to those two questions, I would love to hear that.
Maybe a tag along question that would be, have you even checked to see if it was effective? I think sometimes we push out marketing and even pay for it, and it doesn't do a thing for us. Carrie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, well, I can say our website, the goal is to be a centralized source of information. It's like where to send everyone, and then with options to go other places for other, whether it be driving sales to the online marketplace or making announcements for educational programming to sign up for classes. Those go to Eventbrite. So it's like a central hub of information that links to other sources of information. Truthfully, I don't know how to set up the analytics to evaluate that. I get random notifications from Google saying you've got this many visits to your website, and I'm like, great, but that's the extent of what we have set up. So I don't know how to utilize those tools better.
That's so great. Thank you, Carrie, for sharing that, because that is not uncommon. And I think that is probably one of the really primary discussions that Melissa and I talked about having here today, was like, we're putting time and effort into sharing about our brands and about our businesses and about our products, but we have no idea whether we're achieving the ROI, which is the return on the investment. And investment doesn't always mean money. Sometimes it means time, right? And so Carrie gave a great example of the website and using that as a source of information, as a hub, which is what a website is. And in marketing terms, the website is like your online house. It is the place where you keep all your stuff, right? That is, across the board, having a website, that's where people learn about who you are, what you do, and what you have for them. That's going to help them. But when it comes to measuring, and Carrie, you said something about using your website as a traffic source, like sending people to a product sales page or something like that. My follow-up question to that might be, are you sending people to your main URL when you have a promotion, or are you sending them directly to a sales page? And by that, I mean, as a food hub or an aggregator, right? Remember, you have these two audiences. So let me just back up a second, right? You have marketing assets. You have a class of assets. You've got a website. If you don't have a website, you have flyers, right? You have business cards. You have printed materials that tell customers about what you do, where you are, how you got there, right? It's kind of like your origin story. And Melissa will probably talk about that, because this is storytelling. Whenever you're doing any marketing, you're really telling your story every step of the way. And maybe that includes your why you're doing what you're doing. And that's a class of assets, right? Those are your branding assets. And then you have promotional assets, where you are promoting your business, or you're promoting a product, or you're promoting a service or an event or something very, very specific. And how you're using your assets to drive those two things can be very different and should be very different. it all depends on your goal, which is why I asked that question of you all just a few minutes ago. What was your goal? A lot of times, what I see in my work over many decades is people use marketing tools without setting a goal first. Like, I'm just going to make this flyer because I just need to get this out there. I need to tell people about my products. That's great, but that's not a goal. A goal is something that is measurable, right? It is, I want to do this to achieve this. For example, I want to create this flyer to get more sales, right? You're connecting your marketing with your sales. So you're saying, I'm going to create this flyer, I'm going to hand it out at the farmer's market with the goal of creating sales. Once you have that goal is what determines what happens after that. It determines everything that happens after that. How you design that flyer, what you put on that flyer, the words you use, what is the customer journey. And a lot of this sounds like just a lot of mumbo jumbo just coming out of my face, but it will all fall into context, hopefully by the end of this session. But what I hope that I'm pinpointing for you before I hand the mic over to Melissa to just kind of dive into this a little bit with the storytelling piece is that you're starting to see that marketing isn't just this big bucket of to-dos. It isn't just posting on social media. It isn't just writing a bunch of emails to your subscriber list. It isn't just making flyers, right? There is a method to the madness, and sometimes one can be more effective than the other. And it is a lot. Marketing is a full-time job, which is why we're here talking today to help you streamline some pathways to what the tasks are that will give you the highest return on the time and the effort and maybe even the money that you're putting into your marketing. Does that make sense? Any questions before I let Melissa jump in?
Does this resonate with anybody? Is anybody kind of thinking, yeah, I haven't really thought about how the actions I'm taking, what I want the outcomes to actually be? Because we sort of, I see at least one thumb up, sort of like, I need to post on social media. And what do I get out of that? So Michelle, thank you for like framing that up as we need to understand what it is we're hoping to get out of these actions before we start writing the plan and taking the actions.
Yeah. And I hope we get to dive into some of the, that I can give you some like, here's step 1, step 2, step 3 by the end of this session. You know, I know Melissa and I talked about being able to do that a little bit. And of course, you can always email me anytime. So I'll pause there.
Do we have questions for Michelle, or do we want to hear what Melissa has to say first? I think you're up, Melissa.
Okay. I just typed in the chat here. Kind of, this is how I frame all marketing. It's also how you frame all storytelling. Doesn't matter if you're, telling your friend about the funny thing that happened to you last week or a grand, movie trilogy. It's called the story arc. It's also called The Hero's Journey. It was first written in the 1900s, but if you want to read that book, you can totally read it as well. But this is what the Hero's Journey formatted more for marketing. So it's a customer has a problem who meets a guide that understands their fear and gives them a plan that calls them to action that results in success or failure. Because a part of marketing is telling people, if you don't buy my beef, you've just failed, right? But you have to handle that failure part pretty good. So we definitely look at the successes more often. And what I see most often in food and ag businesses as the first stumbling block that they do is they put the hero of their journey as themselves. And we've we've all seen this. I've been in agriculture my entire life. I'm a farm kid from Iowa. My family still farms there. And definitely Midwestern farmers are told they're feeding the world, right? They're the breadbasket, and they are churning out beans and corn and hogs. That's Midwestern egg right there. So they, they're the hero of their story because they're feeding the world. When in reality, it's the customer is the hero, and then the business, the food, the farm, the ranch is the guide, because we know customers can benefit from what we have. And if you're selling food, that's like the base of Maslow's hierarchy. Sorry to get into like sociology with you all, but it is like everyone eats, and most people want to eat good food. There's very few people out there are like, oh, I don't care, I'm going to go eat bad food every day. Some of us make bad choices in what we eat. I'll admit, I ate 2 pieces of pie at book club last night. That was probably a bad choice on my part. But as a guide, we definitely want to take that hero, our customer, and acknowledge their problem and how we can fix it, right? Super simple as a food hub, especially as you're providing services to producers and to other, wholesale buyers or customers. Like, you are solving problems right and left. And you probably have problems right and left, you feel like, as you're, driving around and delivering food, and refrigerators going down and things like that as well. Your customers maybe don't want to know about your fridge quitting. But that just a little paragraph right there is really the framework of everything. If you do that rack card, if you do the flyer, if you do a social media post, you want to tell your target audience that you're picking, whether it's the producer or your buyer, the consumer, how you're solving their problem. And that's how you pick what you're putting on. Because we're all doing so many different things, you can overwhelm a customer or producer by too much information, especially on social media or an e-newsletter. We're getting so used to our attention spans being very small, and we don't read. It has to be very targeted and clear that this is your problem, I'm solving it. And we also think in threes, and this is why everything is a 3-point list. Michelle even mentioned it. Hopefully we can leave you with a 3-point list. So if you go more than 3, you're probably going to lose your reader, your viewer, and they're going to forget one of your points. So just stick with 3 and send them another email, another touch point, which is probably a good idea anyhow, to follow up with something else, and then continue on telling how you're going to solve their problem and lead them to success. Any questions on that for a framework? Who has, as you're considering, the ways you've told your marketing and your story in the past, do you feel like when you've nailed it, that the customer knows exactly how you're solving their problem, that you've had success? No one had success with it? Aw.
I would be interested if this framing of the customer as the central hero in the story feels new, feels like something that's happening in your hub, or feels like, oh, maybe I haven't been doing that. I would be really interested to know in this group
I think
what you all think is
another
happening.
good to kind of dovetail question to that, Sydney, is how many people really know who they're talking to? Who is your customer? Do you know, or how well do you know your customer? Who is that? Who are they? What do they look like? What are their problems? Why are they coming to you? What do they need? Not just where they live, what their gender, how much money they have, how many kids they have. Like, what are these decisions that your customer is making that they're coming to you to solve what problem, right? And like, how are you capitalizing on that? Or do you not know even how to frame that, or how to get to that place where you understand your what they call in marketing, which is your target customer?
And I think connected to that, though, is strategy, because sometimes it's good to narrow who we want our customer to be. We can't
100%.
be all things to all people. And if we're trying to do that, it's affecting the whole business framework. And it's also going to really dilute the marketing message as well. So really narrowing down of like, oh no, we are serving this type of customer. Maybe that's just wholesale buyers. And we are serving vegetable producers. Done, and that can really help target business operations too, of like not trying to be spread out all over the place. Now, definitely in rural areas, sometimes you have to wear so many hats. It's ridiculous. I live in a town of 7,000. My hats are so stacked. Yeah, sometimes we're in those roles. I understand that. But it can be really helpful to start saying no and to focus things,
Yeah,
not only for
Mag-
marketing, but for business strategy.
for sure.
Carrie?
Maggie, yeah. And Maggie makes a great point in the chat, which I'd like to come back to after Carrie.
Okay.
Yeah, I think when I sit down and think about my different customers, it and I mean I'm a visual learner, so if you list all these different customers, you've got homeless people, you've got working people, you've got busy families, soccer moms, and then my producers are customers too, right? And I feel like a different message could go to each one of those, to the point where you're like all over the map with different kind of messages. So how do you like manage a focused message to all those different customers and still like keep your sanity and not look disorganized?
I would say get it down to 3 and identify the common problems they share. So if you have homeless people, right? And you have, say, not homeless people, right? Housed and unhoused people. They're both your customers, but they probably share at least one common problem. What is that common problem that they share? And they can be in the same segment. Obviously, if you have something that is specific to, say, homeless or unhoused people, and you're doing some promotion, you want to be very specific to talking to those people and say, hey, I have this thing that's going to solve this specific problem for you. Contact me, right? But if you're and again, it starts with what is your goal in communications, in marketing, in storytelling. All of those start with like you thinking about, well, what am I trying to achieve by writing this email? What am I trying to achieve by putting this on my website? What am I trying to achieve by sending this social media post? What is the goal? Are you trying to just build awareness about your brand, your product, your services? Are you trying to like engage and have a feedback loop, like a two-way conversation with the people in your network or who are subscribed to you, or maybe tangentially interested in what you have? Are you trying to tell them exactly what you want them to do? You want them to take a specific action, like subscribe, buy this thing, come into the store, take advantage of this promotion, this sale that we're having this weekend, right? There are different types of communication prompts that you can have with your target audience based on the goals that you're setting. Because if you're just driving awareness, that's a different communication than, hey, we're going to be at the farmer's market this weekend, or we've got a new supplier bringing in this delicious bacon. Sorry, I'm meat centric for anybody who's a vegetarian, who's bringing in this great local bacon. You must try it. We're sampling it this weekend. Those are two different communication messages with two different goals. So hopefully that clarifies it. Melissa, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I had 2 things to add. That the first one is, for my farm business called Melissa Hoff, and it's Melissa's farm in German, if you're wondering. My last name's not Hoff. I'm confusing customers now with that. I'm figuring out. But I sell both live poultry and food products. My customers who buy food products really appreciate locally grown food, regenerative farming techniques. The ones who are buying food products, though, generally they don't have their own flock of chickens. That's a whole different type of people, because the people who have their own chickens are more the people who are raising their own food. They're homesteaders. They have a backyard flock for their own eggs. They don't need to buy my eggs. They got their own. Those customers, though, and I'm talking to both of them at the same time often because they both follow me on social media. They both subscribe to my e-newsletter. They're both on my website. What they care about is the live poultry folks. They want to buy healthy chickens. They want to buy laying hens that are known to thrive on pasture in cold climates. The customers are buying food products. They want to know that the poultry are raised on pasture, that they are hardy, and it's the same language, but for different reasons. One customer wants to know the source of their food and how it was raised and grown. The other customer wants to know that these birds are healthy and clean, are going to provide them with clean and healthy food. And so when you first look at those two target audience, you're like, oh, they're totally different. We have homesteaders, and then I sell my target market, which is another target audience. And then you can have target markets. That's another thing. My target market is Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which anybody been to Jackson? Most people do at some point to see the Tetons in Yellowstone. It's a very wealthy community. And those folks are very willing to purchase good food, and they're very committed to it. And I'm honored that they'll buy from me. But they have a different demographic and age and wealth bracket that Michelle was mentioning, very different than the homesteaders who are raising 5 backyard hens. They actually don't even allow hens in Jackson Hole. You can't have honeybees either. No homesteading happening in Jackson. So it's a very different culture of those customers, but they both want the same thing. And because I put a little more thought into what they both were wanting, I was able to use a lot of the same language around talking to them.
But you made a
Secondly, I
very
just wanted to,
clear, sorry,
go
I
ahead.
wanted to just add to that. You made a very clear distinction when you were describing those two customers, right? The person who wants to buy live chickens, you're telling them about the practices, the health of the animal, right, all of the features, right, of the product that you have. They already understand the benefit of buying from you, right? Although you may communicate that as well. But when you were talking to the eaters, right, the people who want the food, you talked about how convenient it was, how, you're local and all of those things. And those are benefits. And in marketing language, that distinction is really important too, especially when you look at those two different kind of consumer avatars. A lot of times consumers don't make purchasing decisions based on features. They make them based on benefits. How is this product going to benefit me and my life? So I just wanted to say that
Yeah,
out loud.
there's definitely that. And the second thing I wanted to add on was just a little paragraph that I typed in the chat. The key point is making sure your customers are called to action. And in the marketing jargon, it's called a call to action. And you have direct call to actions and you have transitional call to actions. And Michelle offered a bunch of direct ones like come down to the farmer's market and get the bacon. And the transitional ones are more like the recipe in the newsletter. Follow us, sign up for our newsletter and we'll send you recipes and how-tos. And you start developing a relationship with those customers maybe months before they actually make a purchase. And so there are those two calls to action, but every marketing piece that needs to be successful has to include something you're asking the customer to do. Unless you're on social media and just doing lifestyle posts, as I call them, or POVs, they come out a lot now. They're even using that jargon on social media where you're just like, hey, it's snowing today, which it is in Wyoming, by the way. It's very white outside my window. and the chickens are stomping around in the snow, and that would probably be better as a story on social media versus a post. And we won't get too much down into how to use all the different social media functions, but there is a lot of theory behind what you should use a reel for, what you should use a story for, what you should use a post for, and how they're best utilized to go into your whole marketing strategy. So that's like a really quick introduction to that, but I'm not sure we have time to go way out there. But Michelle might have mentioned that the Good Meat Project has a free course on marketing that I haven't taken it, but I'm sure she has been able to take the time to go much deeper on all these topics that we're talking about.
It's pretty intense. It's a 12-hour course. It's 4 parts. It is free. You're welcome to sign up for it. It's on the goodmeatproject.org website, and it is called Marketing Fundamentals Course for Producers. And it covers everything from figuring out what your brand voice is, building a marketing calendar, email marketing, social media marketing, and sales funnel marketing. So it kind of goes through all of the, and that's both online and offline. That's why it's so comprehensive. It really is, worthwhile at least playing in the background when you're, doing your chores, because there are some gems in there that are super relevant to some of the things that we're talking about, but it also has a lot of free resources for you to download. So there is a content calendar that you can use and modify for your own business based on that. There are workbooks that you can download. There's recorded office hours. So sessions like these where people are asking very specific questions about marketing that might give some additional context to it. And it really does help you kind of get a deeper understanding of marketing in general.
There's a question in the chat, Michelle, about talking more about the difference between market and audience. And sometimes they get different definitions. The way I generally do it is market's more a category of a customer or a geographic area of a customer. Category of the customer would be if you're a hub who's only doing wholesale, or if you're a hub that's only doing subscription boxes, CSA type stuff, or if you were just identifying one county, one urban area as your service area. And then the audience would be the people in that area or the people in that category. Because wholesale buyers can be restaurants, or they could be grocery retail, or they could be K-12 cafeterias. And all those folks like different types of food and different quantities of food at different times of year. It could be mind-boggling once you start looking at what they want and need. So, again, that strategy of like, I'm just doing K-12 and I'm going to deal in high quantities of lettuce, knowing what you're going for will really inform your audience and your market that you choose. Michelle, do you have a different definition that you've seen on those?
Nope, that was fantastic. I would say though, with Maggie's comment in the chat, saying, I think hubs know so much about their producers and maybe not as much about their customers, which I see some head nods that maybe that's a true statement for some of you. Because you engage so much with your producers, you probably know where they are, what varieties they're growing, or what species they're raising, who their processors are, where their co-packers are, or whatever. Maybe even who's printing their labels, or what routes they're driving for delivery, or what farmers markets they're at, which is great, right? Because you can now communicate that to your customers on their behalf. But understanding as much about customers is equally as important, because it helps you figure out your messaging to that customer. Which customer are you talking to? When are you talking to them? Why are you talking to them? Do you know what their pain points are? Can a show of hands, has anybody ever heard that phrase, pain points, in marketing? Great. Lindsay, tell me what you think pain points means. Sorry to put you on the spot, but you were the first one to raise your hand.
Oh no, that's okay. I would say it's I don't know, it could be taken a few different ways, I think. I think one way is if have your definition of what a successful marketing campaign is, and then you're not successful in it. Like, figuring out why it failed, why you weren't successful in it. Figuring out another pain point could be figuring out where your audience hangs out, whether that's online on Facebook, or if it's, at the farmers markets, maybe your ideal customer base, your target audience isn't on Facebook and you are, then maybe where do you need to go online if they're not on Facebook? What avenues do you need to create to market?
Interesting. Thank you.
Or how do you connect with them and like the struggle to connect?
Okay, let's put a pin in that for a second. And I want to compare. Jasmine also raised your hand. Do you want to tell us what you think pain points means? You're
Oh,
muted.
you're still muted.
There's a glare. Sorry, pain points. So I guess it's just something that's really uncomfortable that you don't want to shine a light on. That's how I see it. Or just something that like a demographic that's hard for you to reach. I guess that's maybe how I've had it explained to me.
I love this. This is fantastic. So, for the sake of not saying anybody's right or wrong, I want to direct everybody to the chat. And Andy Catalano says, a problem for your customer that your product or service is addressing. I think that is the closest definition of a pain point when that terminology is used in marketing. So a pain point for your customer is a problem that they're having that they want solved. Whether it is, I want to buy this, I want to buy, a share, a CSA share that's close to my house. That's a pain point. That's convenience, right? Who's convenient? Okay, that might be a pain point for someone. Or, wow, I really want to purchase like cuts of meat that are really hard to get access to at the grocery store, right? So that's a pain point. And if you know what the pain points that the people who are coming to you to solve this problem, these problems that they have, if you understand what those pain points are, then you can serve them and solve their problems very well and very effectively. So for example, with that second pain point, I'm a customer. I live near one of your food hubs and I want to find short ribs. And I can't find short ribs at the grocery store, but I want to find them locally. Where do I go? And how do you know that that's a pain point of mine? Well, you don't if you've never met me. However, based on marketing sometimes is reverse engineering the problem, right? If you know your product mix, you know your business model, right? You're a food hub, you're an aggregator, you work with providers, and you are also a supplier, right? And you do things online, or maybe you do things offline, you're at farms, whatever your business model is, you really have to have a good grasp of like, what's your product mix? What's your product or what's your business like model? And then you can identify, well, what are the customers that want those two things? And then you kind of get into things like, well, what's your value proposition? And when you start getting into like your value proposition, you can really reverse engineer what problems are out there that you might focus on in your messaging. So if you are selling local meat products and you have unique cuts, then your target customer might be the person like me who wants to find Korean style cut short ribs because you can get those, right? So hopefully that gives you some how do you learn customer pain points? Great question, Carrie. Research, research, research. I mean, in the Marketing Fundamentals for Producers course that I talked about earlier, there's a whole section about trying to figure out how you learn your customers' pain points. Sometimes they'll tell you directly, so surveys. You already have customers. Figure out what their problems are. Social media is another great research tool. Who's following you or who's following your competition? What are the questions people are asking in the comments? What are they saying? What problems are they trying to solve? Is it convenience? Is it quality? Is it price? Is it whatever the problem is? You can do a lot of intel on that. YouTube and Google are the biggest search engines on the planet. right? Sometimes it's just asking Google a question. Sometimes it's giving a survey. Sometimes it's directly asking a customer that you already have, saying, hey, how was this product or how was this service? What did you like? What didn't you like? Sometimes it's using that social media post for just engagement. Like Melissa was saying, you don't necessarily have to have a call to action on every social media post, but you might share a post that's like, oh, I have this thing, and I'm wondering if any of you out there want this thing. How would this be helpful to you? Leave a suggestion in the comments about like how we can, serve you better or what products you want to see us carry. Sometimes it's just being explicit about like asking someone, what problem can I solve for you?
Jasmine mentioned that they have a retail store and having customers at the register will mention stuff. But sometimes you might want to consider the customers might mention something and then they don't follow through. So you could try offering it. And then if they don't follow, like they don't take you up on it, it's a good idea to reevaluate and drop
Yeah.
that. And I have a kind of a very unique example. I had customers at farmers markets asking me for chicken heads. And one of the things I really do with holistic farming is doing very holistic use of all animals, using all the chicken. So I do organ meats and feet and necks, and I never kept the heads. I didn't think anybody wanted the heads. But after a few customer asked about them, I was like, okay, well, we don't have to compost them. Keep the chicken heads. And it's not the best thing to clean chicken heads but okay, cleaned them, packaged them, offered them for sale. No one bought them. And I'm like, where did those customers go? And I was like, okay, not doing it again, right? It took a lot of time. And it was more just sticking with the ethos of being holistically minded and holistically managed, which is one of the value propositions that I have for Melissa Hoff, than me really wanting to save chicken heads and clean them because, their eyelids stay open while you're doing it. It's just like the worst part of chicken butchering. So I was like, okay, done, not doing it again. So it's important to, take feedback and learn about pain points, but then, if it's not being profitable for you, well, maybe reevaluate after trying to offer it for a little while. But that's one of the things that can really hit success. Because one thing that I tried last year, and I've now become a major pesto product because of it, is growing a lot of hard-neck garlic, and it has scapes that come off of it. Most garlic growers of my scale just compost all those scapes. But I had decided to try to do a pesto product because some customers asked for it. They didn't want to buy the scapes and make pesto themselves because of the convenience thing. They wanted to buy the pesto pre-made. And I was like, okay, I'll make some pesto. And then it's been selling so well and has the highest profit margin of all my products. I'm now hiring a co-packer to have pesto. And I never thought I'd be doing pesto. But I'm like, okay, it's really helping my business out for some profitability, and it sticks with that holistic mission that I have using the entire plant. And then I buy local cheese for it and local basil from area farmers. So it's, local food economy type thing, which is important to me. And I think as we look at making decisions of strategy and market and audience and language is knowing what the mission is. I've done a lot of nonprofit work in between journalism and other stuff. And, there's lots of talk about mission in nonprofit organizations, not so much in for-profit business, but I think it really can create more success for any entity type to have a mission, even if you're a for-profit. Yeah, you want to be profitable, but also what are your driving goals and what are you evaluating all decisions on in relation to is that mission statement of what you're doing. And as we all know, if you're in nonprofits, it's the one sentence mission statement, short and sweet. And it can be really easy to go pesto or no, chicken heads or no, based on that mission statement.
I'm just really stoked, Melissa, that you were able to start us at chicken heads and end us at pesto.
You could maybe eat them together.
Not the set of connections that I thought we'd be making today, but I think a really fun one. It looks like we have some activity in the chat, and do we have some questions that have bubbled up? from this or comments about how you are seeing this in your hubs, seeing examples that you could take back to your hubs or questions that you might start asking your customers. I don't believe you that not one of you has learned anything. I'm not buying it. Jasmine, you're in the center of my screen, so I am going to pick on you. Plus, you laughed.
Well, I learned what pain points are.
I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
Erin Maidla's multitasking.
Yeah, I'm actually
And-
writing a grant that's including marketing for historically underserved producers right now. So this has been really great. Perfect timing.
Good.
I have a
good.
question.
Sometimes,
Oh.
go ahead, Tanya.
Oh, I was just gonna ask, I think where my mind went with hubs is like you are largely marketing like more business to business. And so you have these connections already. And so I'm just curious in that environment, like I'm not saying you shouldn't do like have a website, but I'm curious like where social media fits into that environment. Like how important is it? And are there different strategies when you're really more of a B2B operation?
That is a fantastic question. I love that question. And it is a common question like, oh, well, I'm just, B2B. Do I really need social media? Do you have a target customer? Yes, you do. Is your target customer on social media? If the answer is no, then no, you don't need social media. Maybe you need a different type of communication. Maybe you need direct marketing, like you're sending postcards or you're sending emails or you're sending letters, right? Or you're making phone calls. It really depends on your target customer, right? You really have to know who you're talking to, right? So if your target customer isn't on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, if they're not there, don't waste your time being there. If you are a food hub and you're doing mostly B2B, and maybe your target customer isn't on Facebook, but they're in Facebook groups, well, that's a whole different thing, right? Then you can participate in Facebook groups, not just post your stuff in Facebook groups, but like engage with Facebook groups. Give something, get something. Make a comment, like a picture, share a thing. Make a comment, like a picture, share a thing. And you kind of get into engaging with this very specific audience. That's not a bad thing. If your audience is small, that's not a bad thing. What matters is your audience engaged? Are they taking action? Are they doing the things you're asking them to do? Or do you just have a big, huge audience that are a bunch of tire kickers? Who wants that? Nobody wants that. Because then you're doing it all for what? For what? To be ignored and for people to just be like, scroll, scroll, scroll. Like none of us, and I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say that we're all busy. And none of us have time to just like be posting on Instagram for the sake of posting on Instagram. I know I don't. And I'm just going to make that assumption about most of the people in this room. Sure, it's fun, right? Like it's fun to like share something cool and get a like or get a comment and get that engagement. But if you start with like trying to do it because that's just the status quo, oh, because everybody's doing it, that's a horrible reason. It's a horrible reason to do anything, really, in my opinion, but especially Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, any of those, because it's a lot of work to do it really, really well. So if you start with one platform, not just arbitrarily picking what platform that is, but really thinking about who's my target customer and where are they on the internet? Where are they? Where are they mostly hanging out? If it's on Instagram, then great. Develop a strategy and a social media calendar plan for sharing your promotions and your business and your content on Instagram. If they're not on Instagram, like if your demographic is a little bit older and they're on Facebook, well, then talk to those people. If it's B2B professionals because you have a service and you're really just trying to let everybody know what your service is and champion for your service or share your service, then maybe LinkedIn is the place for you. But each one of those platforms, you're using a different like vernacular, right? On LinkedIn, it's a little more business and formal. On Instagram, it's just like, woo, lifestyle. On Facebook, it's a little bit more, I don't even know, maybe I don't know. I feel like Facebook is just flippant. Like you can say whatever you want on Facebook. But really these considerations matter. Not only because you want to be effective in what you're doing, but you also want to like spare yourself the time and the frustration, right? This is part of self-care. I put this in self-care bucket where you're really thinking about, okay, how much time during the day or during the week do I have allocated for marketing? If it's 1 hour, great. Make it one solid hour, right? That I'm going to do this. I've got my posts laid out for the week. I'm going to schedule them in Buffer. I'm going to design them all on the same day. I know that they're linking back to a specific page on my website or a blog post or a sales page, some call to action that I want people to take in these posts. And then I'm going to track it because, all right, I'm using Instagram so I can look at meta insights, right? This is the kind of total 30,000-foot view that you kind of have to think about when you're really starting to get your marketing ducks in a row. It really will help you with your bandwidth. It will help you with your focus, with your attention, with the way that you're crafting your message because you're doing it in a formula, in a formulaic way that you can duplicate if it works. And how do you know if something's working? Is that if you've achieved the goal. If it's getting more subscribers and you get more subscribers or you get traction on a post and you're like, oh, that worked. Let me duplicate that. Let me try that again next week with this thing. And then you track that. Don't repeat things that aren't working. If they're not giving you any ROI, you're spinning your wheels and you're just going to burn out. And social media burnout is a real thing.
There is there's merit to having a presence on social media. Like say you do have an Instagram page, but you only post on it, every other week. So people can see you're there, but you're not putting a lot of energy to it. And one thing I've seen, I think people are getting a little internet saturated. There's so much going on social media and the internet. I've seen some good luck in going back to hard copy, a fun little postcard people put on their fridge because it's beautiful and it makes them laugh, like something just entertaining and creative that reminds them to purchase from you, or hey, this is your CSA pickup week, and hire a local artist to make it fun. Another thing is the in-person events, and I've had some good luck working with the local Chamber of Commerce. A lot of Chamber of Commerce have monthly business after hours, and I hosted one as a hatchery. I'm outside of town. I was like, okay, we'll get maybe 10 people. It was 30-mile-per-hour winds on a chilly April day, and over 40 people showed up to look at chickens. Like, okay, these are people I didn't know. I didn't even get to talk to everybody. And I was
They're
like, great.
committed.
Like they were committed. I got put on the billboard for the Chamber of Commerce in town, flashing, and, cool. That in-person connection. I think people wanted adventure. They wanted to come see chickens. They wanted to do something different. And that's especially with all the farms you guys and ranches you guys are connected to, you could make that type of in-person social event happen.
Come
Definitely
to the
post about it
hub.
on social media.
Yeah.
Get the press involved. Get your newspaper article there. Get a reporter there. They still do that type of thing. Sometimes the online news site, but they still send reporters out to events, and that really generates content and awareness that will give you some huge boosts over weekly posts on social media, but it also puts you as a guide. talking about being that guide to your customer, it places you as that authority figure. Because another thing I've done a lot is hosted educational workshops about poultry care. Definitely, this is my target audience, so the people who are going to buy live poultry from me. But I host it for free. They come learn how to take care of chickens and see all my cool coop setups. And then they get inspired to go care for their chickens. And the likelihood that they'll buy from me in the future is much higher because they just met me in person. And hopefully they learned something and they saw that I know how to take care of chickens. So again, like doing those type of in-person events strategically, though, because they can take a lot of time. For those of you who have arranged events, they can. Tanya just did a huge conference I was at in Portland. They take a lot of time, but they can be really fruitful for folks to have conversations in person. I think especially post-COVID, people are more and more like, no, I want that in-person social interaction. I want to know my neighbors. I want connected to people who grow my food in person more than just doing it through the internet. I wanted to go back to someone who was talking about they were writing a grant to market to underserved. An underserved audience, depending on who they are, they can be total different channels than we've thought about. For instance, in my area, there's a growing Mennonite community. They're not on the internet. They're not even get your email newsletter, but they all have mailing addresses and you can mail them a hard copy. And, so thinking about what is that underserved audience? Where are they hanging out? Should you communicate with them is really crucial with any target audience. And underserved may be slightly different or need different language. I work a lot with tribes, American Indian tribes, and they do need a different language than just talking to white people when you're working with them, especially around food sovereignty, right? They're not talking food security. They're talking food sovereignty, which comes with way bigger things. It's talking about rights and land rights and tribal rights. And they were here before white people. Like there's this whole generational history pulled into sovereignty for them. So, knowing your target audience, especially when you switch to maybe underserved audiences that you haven't worked with a lot, is really important to learn what their culture is and how to interact with them well.
I appreciate the connections that you're both helping us make to what is the goal? What do we want out of this action? Which then informs what the actions are, and also identifying where is the audience that you want to reach hanging out. It might not be social media. I think a lot of us are using social media and newsletters and kind of a similar lineup of things. And I think that the takeaway question that I hear that I hope you're all asking yourself is that the right set of tools for me to use? Is that the right places for me to try and reach folks? Who do I want to reach anyway? Because I think all of you are reaching slightly different folks for different reasons.
I have something to say about the in-person events and speaking at in-person events like Kiwanis and City Council. And I'm an avid believer in that. And I always take the time to do that. And I feel like those are when I get like the most feedback, like that it worked or it didn't work, right? Like, and opportunities like come from those meetings and those interactions. Like I took the time to speak at an OSU Master Gardeners group in the south part of our county. And from that, some, the older population formed a carpool to travel 40 miles to go to our food hub to spend their green FDNP checks. And that was like just something that directly happened because I went to that, because I told them about that program. Same things with like City Council, like Jasmine, I heard you talk, and we have this grant opportunity or the sponsorship opportunity. And so it's just such like a direct connection. And instead of looking at analytics and not really sure what that means, I just find that, yeah, I can either tell that it was really worth it or not. And if I should go back and make it an annual thing and put it on my calendar. So I just wanted to share those examples.
Jasmine, when you go to those, oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. When you go to those things, do you know what you're trying to get out of out of that interaction? Like when you went to the Kiwanis Club thing, were you going because I'm going to get more customers from my retail store, or were you going just to let folks know that you existed, or what was your reason for saying yes to that particular event?
Kiwanis, they have an annual sponsorship. So sometimes I just go to get on their radar so that they can give us money for things like our POP program, our Power of Produce for the kids. But for city council, it's just so that they know that I think that our local food programming and our presence can actually have like an influence on the economic environment in their town, and to like think about that when they're making decisions. So I just like to have like a presence, like an economic kind of presence, and give them stats on how much local food we're selling. And so with that, it's just kind of like, I want our city councilors to advocate for us. And when they're in other groups, it's all very different. Like I knew that there was a senior population at the OSU Master Gardeners. And so I knew that most of them do get those FDNP green checks. And so I definitely, promoted that. Yeah, I tailor my talks, and I use the same slide deck, but I definitely like manipulate it a little bit for every group. And I just choose what I focus on. The school board, obviously I'm talking about how like the benefits from us mentoring the agricultural class in the high school and seeing those produce sales being sold in our retail environment. So it's different for everything.
And you don't have to wait for an invitation. Like Rotary
No.
meets every single week, and they want a guest speaker every week. So you could figure out who's leading the Elks, the Kiwanis, the Rotary, and invite yourself. And it's great. It's the civic leaders and the business owners of the community. So business to business relationships, a great way to get to know them. And then also talk about, when I've done it before for a local food economy project, I talked about the many small businesses we were impacting, from farm and food. And like, it wasn't just a few businesses. And most of those participants were like, wow, we had no idea local food was such a big thing, or is even ranked in our economy, and, they go out and talk about it after that. So it's a great way to, especially business to business, to get awareness. And targeting your talks, as Jasmine said, is definitely a good idea. It's just like targeting your audience on social media. Go ahead.
And once you get on the agenda of one group, and if you're in a smaller community like our county, once you get on the agenda to talk at one, then the other ones will ask you. And then all of a sudden you're just on everybody's agenda for that year. So that works.
And it's a good idea to go annually. Yeah. To make sure you can update them and be like, hey, this is our new thing, or this is what we're doing now.
That has definitely gotten the most buy-in for our organization. And anytime anybody asks us, ask me like what made this program so accepted by your community, I really think it's that outreach to different groups, that one-on-one, face-to-face.
And one thing to think about too, Jasmine, it sounds like you do all the talking yourself, but I know not everyone likes public speaking, but you could identify someone else to do it for you if you weren't comfortable doing it, like a board member or a producer. There's some great producers out there that would really entertain the crowd, right, at a Rotary luncheon. So there's ways to use your skills and still accomplish some cool things.
Do we have any questions in this group, or any other efforts that we want to share that have worked for us or have not worked for us? None.
I've got another question for everybody.
Yeah.
How many of you have a Google business profile?
Oh, that's a good one.
About 3 out of 19. So a Google business profile is a great way to improve your local SEO naturally. It's a great way to have Google crawl your profile. It's a great way for local customers to engage with you when they're searching for Food Hub in Klamath or wherever you are, right? That's a long tail keyword. I'm giving you some lingo here. And you can ask your customers that, at least the ones that have email or have access to the internet, to leave you a review, right? And that does wonders. It's called like you're having your customers validate you, as opposed to you having to validate yourself in the minds of potential customers. Other people can validate them for you. Someone leaves a 5-star review and is like, oh, Klamath Grown is great. And I'm not picking on Klamath Grown. It's just right in the center of my screen, so I'm using it there. And I did a quick Google search to see if there was a Google business profile for Klamath Grown. And, you know, it's really easy to do. It's free to set up. You can add a couple of pictures. You can link it to your website. You can link it to your communications. You can tell your customers about it in your email communications. Be like, hey, we've got this great Google business profile view if you love what we do. And it's a great way to just like have a local presence on Google, and it's very easy, simple, and free. And sometimes you might get lucky. Someone might find you that way.
Definitely have a retail location. I used to travel a lot for work, and I just pull Google Maps up on my phone and I click the little food icon and be like, what is near me to eat? And if don't have a Google profile, you might not show up on Google Maps. And even locals use that, I've noticed, to get around and see what's going on, especially in an urban area that might be a little bit bigger. Generally not my town because it's too small. You notice when there's a new restaurant opening up for sure. But the second thing about that is those reviews provide that testimonial, and you definitely want those on the website because it provides that third-party acknowledgement of your authority, like you did a good job. And you can also use it to overcome a bad review. So last hatch season, Melissa Ov had a bad review on Google Reviews from a customer who the Postal Service lost her box of hatching eggs. So I ship hatching eggs nationally from these heritage breeds. And I shipped over 30 states right now. So do quite a bit of it. It wasn't my fault the Postal Service lost the box. The box was insured. I was working with the customer to get insurance. She didn't think it was a fast enough process. And so she left a bad review. Well, you can't take them off, right? Like there they are. So you respond appropriately to them. And, I responded appropriately about, hey, it was insured, working with the Postal Service, things like that. But then it kind of stood out and it impacted my, people just look at the stars. How many stars do you have on your review? And I was like, oh man, I need to get more good reviews on here to make this look a little bit better. So I emailed all current customers and I did a little promotion and said, you will get a 20% off coupon if you leave me a Google review, and I'll do a drawing. And they all thought that was fantastic. So they all left me a review because I hadn't done it yet. And then I did a drawing, and one of them is actually a gal from Washington State, got a coupon. And I did it on social media to make it a little more fun. I had my cat pull it out of a hat. Anyways, you can do fun stuff like that if you enjoy doing it. And, but the reason I went into all that effort, right, was because I knew I had this bad review that was impacting my star ratings. And I wanted to get a little bit of it more balanced out, because the more good reviews you have, they balance out anything negative on there. So you can use that Google review process strategically, even when you get bad reviews as well.
Cool. Thank you, Melissa. There is a question in the chat from Tanya. I don't know if you two have been able to see it, but we've got a couple, including me, plus ones on. We'd love to go there on that question.
I can just try to
Yeah, I was going to ask you to just read it. Yeah.
So I guess just kind of thinking about that framing of like the problem to be solved, and how you're communicating around that. I've been in some form or other trying to like support the sales of local food for a long time. And I think, when you're thinking about sort of new customers, inevitably you're running into some people who are eaters, but that it might like that might not be their problem to solve, right? They might not be like, oh, I really need to find local. And so I guess I'm just wondering whether it makes sense to actually put effort into essentially trying to convince those eaters that they have a problem to solve, because they don't think they do. So before they're going to get to that point where it's a problem and you're trying to address or a pain point, like they don't have a pain point or a problem. And if you are going to go down that road of like trying to convince them that they have a problem or a pain point, how do you do that with a positive message that's not like telling them it's because like out of fear, because, you know, all the reasons that it's terrible to not eat locally?
Well, I would say everybody has a pain point. And again, I think it goes back to what's your goal, right? If you are in a local community trying to sell local food and you know just inherently you're not the only one in the community that can be a provider, and you're not going to be all things to all people, then it might make sense to focus on the people you can serve most effectively, which is your target customer, right? I don't necessarily subscribe to the growth at all costs, right? I don't think it's about, well, you've always got to get new customers. Yes, there's, you know, in business, you have to stay profitable in order to still be a business, right? However, there's a thing in marketing in the very advanced stages when you start looking at customer value optimization, right? It's CVO, which is more on the economic life cycle of a customer. Because every time you get a new customer, there's a thing called an acquisition cost. How many people in this room know their customer acquisition cost? I'm going to guess maybe nobody, because it's not a thing that we like think about. But it is a metric, right, that people use in marketing. When you get a new customer, how much did you have to spend to get that customer? And so the point is, I think in the beginning stages of marketing, it's really important to focus on repeat customers, right? That's your lowest hanging fruit. Those are the people who trust you already. They know your product. They love you in some way, shape, or form. And being able to give them what they want or have them make a second purchase from you is often more economically feasible and easier. Not in all cases, not all, but most, right? And then you can focus on new customer acquisition and the ways that you want to do that. And, you know, through what channels do you want to do that? Are you going to the Rotary Club meetings, right, to get new customers, to tell them about your products? The cost of that, you know, from Jasmine was Jasmine's time. It took you time to go over there. It took you time to put your 5-minute presentation, you know, talking points together and engage with the people who were there. And if somebody was interested, to usher them to the next phase of the process of becoming a customer, it takes time, right? So it's you're either going to pay money for it or you're going to pay time for it. But either way, it's still an investment that you have to make. So I think to answer your question directly, I don't think marketing is convincing. You connect with people when they're making purchasing decisions through how you tell your story. What's your why? You know, I was waiting for Melissa to get into the why of storytelling, right? Because people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that doesn't take much convincing. Maybe it takes a couple of touch points, like you might need to engage with them once, twice, 3 times, maybe 5 times before they actually make a purchase from you or make some kind of financial commitment to you and your business. But it doesn't take convincing people. You are telling your authentic story. You're saying, hey, I'm doing this because it matters to me, because I'm making a difference, because I'm providing value, or, whatever your why is. And those people who care about those same things, who are aligned with those values, they will be your customers. You don't have to convince people to buy your stuff. They're either going to buy it or they're not going to buy it. Every customer has a different pain point that they might be trying to solve. But I think focusing on the customers that connect with your values and your why, and then you give them the message and the options and the value that they're looking for that no one else can give to them, because you've got great customer service, or you're really a great listener, or you have a superior product and you've told them why it's superior in the marketplace, right? Or you're giving them some economic value that nobody else is giving them. Those are the things that play a role in consumer purchasing decisions or donations if you're a nonprofit, or whatever it is that your goal is. So I think that perspective of convincing and maybe doing it in a positive way, or if the framework is understanding your target customer, understanding your value proposition, and then communicating that in your storytelling and your why.
Yeah, and Tanya, one way to think about it is the why often relates to the problem. So like if you had a CSA, which most people are attracted to it based on they like local foods, right? But the soccer moms who could care less about local foods, but love having a Hello Fresh box show up at their door for the convenience of having all this fresh produce right there with some menu prompts, recipe prompts, could also be convinced that your CSA of locally grown food product, this is just as convenient and just as good priced and has as much quality for the price as that one that just shipped across the country on ice, So they're not the ones who are going to respond to the eat local, but they're going to respond to different language about the same thing of like, hey, we've got the freshest produce for a bulk discount and it's from right here from our producers, so you put the local food producers maybe as the third or fourth point down, but have all the other value propositions perhaps at the top and talk about it, how it's super convenient and gets them all their veggies for a week and it's fresh and it's good for their kids and there's recipe cards, that type of thing. So that's one way. And I do that a lot. I call them the naysayers, the local food naysayers. And you're constantly like defending why it's investment in local food is important. I do more infrastructure stuff, market infrastructure. So I'm working with county commissioners and elected officials. And this is why we need to support our farmers markets infrastructures and our local food retail and our food hubs and our legislation like the Wyoming Food Freedom Act. Like that's talking to a lot of those folks, and I have to use different language with them, but looking for those underlying values or underlying problems that local food can solve is where you can make a lot of things happen.
Thank you both so much. We actually ran to the hour and a half mark. I appreciate Michelle and Melissa, both of you, so much for making the time to dig into this with all of us. I think it was really helpful. I think there's a lot for everybody to think about it, and just thank you. Anything we can do for you.
Thanks for having us. And yeah, give us a shout if you have other thoughts, ideas.
Be careful what you wish for.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it. And Michelle, thanks for sharing your amazing marketing resource. I hope a lot of folks take a look through there.
Yeah.
I think that is an incredible resource that you have available on Good Meat Project.
Thank you. And Sydney, I am going to send you the glossary as a PDF that you can email to everyone who is here, just to kind of level the playing field with the vernacular so that everybody has a good understanding of just some basic. It made me think I need to put pain points in here. I didn't have that one.
I really appreciate you putting that together. That's
Yeah.
amazing. It's super appreciated. I mean, truly, both of you, thank you so much for the help.
Yeah. Thank you. Everyone have
Good
a
luck,
good day.
everybody.
Take care, everyone. Bye.